Hello everyone. Today I want to cover dependency injection in Blazor. First I will quickly go over what dependency injection is. So we will have two modules or two classes. One is higher, the other is lower, and the higher one depends on the lower class. For example, the customer service class needs to use the functionality of the customer data access class, right? In order to get data from database. Then we say that customer service is a dependency upon the customer and data access class. In order for the higher module to use the functionality of the lower module, we have different ways to do it, right? The first obvious way is to have an instance of this customer class right over here, right? And then we just call it customer DA, right? And then in our constructor, say custom DA equals new customer data access, with probably with a connection string from somewhere, right? And then you can use it to, for example, get a customer, get customers, right? And then in here we can just say customer return customer dot get customers, and that's actually you'll have a enumerable, right? So we get a list of customers like this. So this is one way to make the make use of the functionality of the lower module. But as you can see that the customer service is tightly coupled with customer data access. It's aware of the definition of this class, and there are many different problems with this. For example, if you want to have different teams work on higher level object, one team work on higher level module, the other team work on lower level module, because this tight coupling, it's very difficult to work in parallel, right? And also, if we were to change this, the name of this class, then you have to go to change all of the codes over here, right? You're gonna change this, you're gonna change this. So and you need to recompile the higher modules in order to do that change, right? So the maintainability is not good, right? And later, if we want to, so if this data access layer is going against a file system, right? And later you want to create another class, right? That's going against a database, right? SQL database, for example, like this, right? Then you would have to go inside and change the code, right? So that's extendability is also not good. So there's many different disadvantage of doing this kind of tight coupling. So there's this dependency inversion principle, which says higher level modules should not be dependent on lower level modules. Both should be dependent on abstraction. So what is the abstraction? Abstraction is because there is the dependency between the service class and the data access class, right? So that dependency cannot be removed. Instead, what we need to do is to abstract that dependency, and that dependency is the functionality, right? So dependency is the functionality, and we need to abstract that functionality. And in C#, the way to access abstract that functionality is to use interface. So we can create an interface like this, right? And then we can say I customer data access, and in there we can just say, all we want to do is to have to get a list of customers. This is the abstraction, right? So basically it just says I have a way to get customers. Then whoever implements this interface will have to implement notice that this method doesn't have a body, right? It doesn't have an implementation. So whoever actually implements this interface, right, they need to have this this thing implemented. So over here, we need to implement this in the concrete class. Right, I'm not going to implement anything. I'm just going to do this. Right, so in this way, we are not actually using the concrete class here. We're just doing this, and that takes the dependency away. But again, it's still having the same problem. We're actually creating this instance of this concrete class. Right here means that the higher level object is still aware of the lower level object. So how do we do that? We have to take this responsibility away from the customer service, and this responsibility is the instantiation responsibility, and we need to take that away, and this is called inversion of control, right? But don't worry about that. And how do we do that? We need to create it from outside, right? The simplest way is just to create it from outside, like this. The A, let's use a different variable name, right? And you can just do it this way. And then when this class is instantiated, we can just do it like this. Right. And then you can say DA equals DA, and that's it, right? So our private instance has this, and then from outside when we instantiate this class, then we can just say, pass this into it. So these are the main two steps. First, we need to use an abstraction, which is interface in C#, right? Secondly, instead of directly instantiating the concrete implementation of the interface, we use constructor, and then pass that instance from outside into here. So this is the dependency injection in C# and it's the same concept in every other languages. Of course, there are different ways to do it. This is through the instructor. You can also create a property of that, and then just say, if we were to create a property, instead of doing it like this, we can just say, have our constructor stay right here, and then we can just say, public I. So in that case, we don't need this. Right? We can say I customer data access, and then we can say, customer data access equals. Well, let's use this name because it is equals get and set. So this is the property in C#, and then when you use it like this, you can just say, instead of doing it like this, you can just remove this, and then from here, customer service, and then you can say custom data access equals data access, and then you can use it in other methods. So that's dependency injection in general. And then next, let's go into Visual Studio and see how dependency really works in Blazor components. Let's see how dependency is injected into Blazor components. First, let's look at server-side Blazor. Let's create a class. Let's call it customer service. This customer service will have a public method that returns a customer. And for that, let's first create a customer class as well. And that's it. Let's keep it simple. And in here, we'll return the customer. We'll say get customer by ID. and the parameter is an integer, which is the ID. Right? I'll create a constructor, and in this constructor, let's initialize a list of customers. And then in here, okay, so we have this service, and we want to inject it into Blazor components. And let's inject into the index component, which is a page component that has a routing path here. Right? So let's delete this survey prompt, and let's use this in our code. Right? So one way to do it is to declare a customer service, and then we'll just say customer service equals new customer service. Okay. So this has this dependency problem that is making the index component tightly coupled with the customer service class. But that's not what we want to do. Right? So we have learned what dependency injection really is. There are two main steps. First is that we need to use interface so that our index component is dependent on the interface. So what we need to do is to create an interface. Okay. So give it an interface. Was it customer service, right? There's only one behavior right here, which is getting the customer by ID, right? So we copy that and paste it over here, and that's it. That's the what's it must declare a body. Oh, okay, yeah. So this is abstraction, so it doesn't need a body. And then going over here, we just use our customer service. Right, so we have already implemented the abstraction. And the second step is to inject. Right, so first we need to register into the container, which Blazor is based on ASP.NET Core, and ASP.NET Core, there's in order to register the service classes into the container, we can use configure services. Right? So we can register right here, but there are actually three different lifetime scopes. Right? There's singleton, there's scoped, and there's also transient. Right? So first, let's examine transient, given the pair of the interface as well as the implementation. Right? And then when we ask for it, we go to our component where we want to use the customer service, and we just say inject, right? Inject customer service, right? And then right over here, we can just declare a private, customer. This is our model class, so it's okay to be dependent on our model class, right? So, and then in the override, let's override right? I just want to set a breakpoint, just so that I can show you when this component is disposed. Right, so I'm going to debug. So if I move away, you can see when I move away, it actually disposes. Right? When we move back, it creates again. When I move away, it disposes, and when we move back, it creates again. And if you pay attention to these numbers, right, 767, when I move away, let's remove the breakpoint and move back, number changed from 767 to 1B7, right? You can see every time I do this, the number changes. And the reason, every time I move away, you can see the dispose method. And navigate away from the index component, you can see the dispose method gets called because the index component corresponds to this home page, right? So this dispose method gets called, which means that every time I move away, this component is actually destroyed, right? And when I come back, this component is created. Whenever it's created, this dependency injection injects the class to our component. Then we can use it here, right? So this is, and every time it changes, and this is the behavior of transit. Transit says that I register a service to a container, and every time I ask for an instance, the container will create a new instance of that class and inject that into our component, right? Into where we want to use it. So that's what we call transit. And if we want to see what scope means, let's actually see what singleton means first. Right? So let's change this. Singleton. And this time I'm actually going to use Control F5 to debug it. Well, so that I can run it without debugging. Actually, I'm not debugging it. Alright, so you can see that we have this number here, and if I move away and move back, you can see the number does not change. So that's singleton. Singleton means there's only one single instance of the object, the customer survey object, in the container throughout the lifetime of this application, right? Even when you refresh, right, which actually resets the connection. You can see the number does not change, and that's the behavior of singleton. Singleton, there's only one instance, and if we want to look at how scope means, how scope works, let's change this to scoped. Alright, and then let's come over here, refresh the screen because we used Control F5, so this hot reload works. So let's refresh it, and you can see the number change, right? And then, but if we navigate away and navigate back, you can see the number still the same. It doesn't change. So it seems like it's a singleton, but it's not. So if I refresh, which by refreshing this, it disconnects the connection and reestablish the signal R connection, right? Because this is Blazor server side. So then the connection is broken and reestablished. So you can see this time the number changed after I refresh. And that tells us that the scoped lifetime configuration makes the service live as long as the connection. Okay, so as long as the connection does not get disconnected, you will always have one instance. You have to choose the best suitable lifetime configuration for your services class, right? Because some of them you want to use transit, and some of them you want to use scoped for better performance or for whatever reason, and some of them you want to use singleton. right? For example, if you want to use some classes to contain some data and try to implement state management that way, and you don't want to use singleton because that way you are sharing the data across all of the users, right? Even users from different browser sessions from different part of the world are going to see the same data unless that's your purpose. So for state management that is very specific to a particular user, you can use scoped, and that's related to that one particular connection, which cannot be shared between different browsers, right? But for very light services, you want to probably use transient, right? For services that is not thread safe, which means concurrency doesn't work. For example, the DB context from Entity Framework, you don't want to use singleton, you don't want to use scope. Even for transient, it's created every single time, it may still have problems. So you really want to consider the different services and different scenarios. So this is Blazor server side. So next, let's look at Blazor WebAssembly. We're going to have another instance of Visual Studio 2019, and then we click on Blazor app. This time, we don't see that startup file. That's this is WebAssembly, so it doesn't actually have it. And you can see that they are registered right here. So we can do a similar thing. And we can say builder.services.app_transient. So we're going to say customer service. Okay, so we don't have this namespace is wrong. So we have our customer service, provide this to it. So basically we're just saying that for this interface, this class implements the interface. And then when we ask for an instance of this interface, the container, the built-in container is actually going to create an instance for us by instantiating this customer service, right? And what we want to do here is same thing. We're gonna do it within here, where we will inject our customer service over here, and then we are adding this. We're actually going to copy this code from right over here. Here we register transient, right? So let's run it. Control F5 again. So we have this running, and we can see the number is CE2D. When we move away, number change, move away, number changed again. If we refresh, number change, right? Refresh again, number changed again, right? So this is transient, right? So basically, it's the same thing as Blazor server side, where every type of components class is instantiated, a new instance is instantiated and injected into the component, right? So that's that one. And then singleton actually basically works the same way, right? Which is also, every time you ask for it, you're gonna have the same instance. All right, so refreshing, downloading that again. So you can see that it's C97, and if I move away, move back, C97, and I refresh, see that this works differently now. The refresh actually changes the number. See, every time I refresh, I get a different number. So I explain this a little bit later. but we just take a look at the scope, and I build again, and then come over here and refresh, downloading the whole thing. 949, when I move away, move back, it's the same, right? It's the same number, but when I refresh, it also changes. So it looks like the singleton and the scope are working exactly the same way, right? Only transient works differently. And the reason for that because this is WebAssembly. So the whole server-side code is actually downloaded. All of the DLLs are downloaded to the client side inside the browser. And inside there we have this WebAssembly context, and all of them are actually hosted within that context. Okay. So, which basically means this program, this console application here, is actually running inside the browser. That's why every time you refresh it, it creates a new instance of this program, right? Because this program the console application is basically destroyed, and then it's recreated, and the main method is run again, and that's why you see even with singleton, it gets different number, different IDs every time you refresh the browser, right? And the scoped, because there's no connection and there's no request, so Blazor WebAssembly doesn't actually have a scoped lifetime management configuration. If you use scope, it's going to work the same way as singleton. All right, so that's everything I want to cover for today. There's one last piece about dependency injection in Blazor, which is about configuring owning components, and that one is probably not so, you don't use it so often, so I'm not going to cover in this video. You can go ahead and read the documentation. Alright, thank you very much for watching. If you like my videos, please give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next episode. Thank you.